Hey guys, I joined an OldWorld startup grow league, and it's been a great little addition. It's allowed me to just get into painting my Tomb Kings, which I've kind of just picked up when OldWorld came out, printed everything off, undercoated it, and I've not done a lot with it since. I have played a cheeky game or two, so I wanted to get a run out with these and start growing up the force, and it basically will allow me to push my painting to get it done, essentially. Because what I tend to do with armies is I'll only paint it if I've got an upcoming game. So with like a league, and it's going to have 6 rounds, I'm essentially going to get pushed to paint my army, which will be ideal. Once the army's painted, I do plan to get down to some tournaments. And I also would like to film some proper old world battle reports with a fully painted Tomb Kings army. I do have a pretty a painted Brettonian army that I did convert to Kings of War because Old World kind of wasn't around, back then. But this is what I used to play 7th and 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy with. I turned it to a Kings of War army and regret that now, obviously. I converted it all to Kings of War and then just didn't do anything with it. Either way, I've got 2 games here. I'm going to speed up the footage. I did like a top-down camera of the table. It didn't capture all of the table, it just captured the middle. So I have taken a couple of pictures with my phone and a couple of videos, and I'm just going to... Hey guys, I'm going to be running you through the 999 points of my Tomb Kings of Khemri Royal Host list. Starting you up, here's the tomb points, the main man himself. I have basically given him a magic weapon, which is the Fatax Blades of Justice, which is a 35 points, -1 AP. It gets +1 attack per rank the enemy has. There's good little blender lord in case I come against any hoardy stuff. I was thinking of like orcs and goblins, maybe other undead that might be coming up against. He's been given the Arise upgrade, which is specific to the Tomb Kings Royal Host list. Essentially, language of the priests. They know level 1 necromancy or the Tomb Kings of Khemri specific magic stuff. They can do an Arise once per turn, which allows them to bring back friendly models at level 1. And they can be the army's Hierophant, which is massive for these small games. Your Tomb Prince is probably the most durable unit in the list. Well, it depends on how you do. I'm throwing him at my enemies. He's mounted on a skeleton chariot, which is not a bad little package. So Mortuary Priest is then next up, coming in at 105 points. He's a level 2 upgrade on foot, and I gave him the Curse Weaver wand. Basically, I wanted to add a +1 to cast on hexes. That's what that magic item does. So I can try and get, Curse of Years, Spirit Leech, or Curse of Desiccation on my opponents, which could be a nasty little debuff. Next up, we've got the Necrotech. I did shift the list around to include this guy. I wanted to try him out, and especially with the big infantry cohort that I've got in the list, I gave him the Amulet of the Serpent. He's literally bare bones, hand weapon, whip, light armor. He does get the special rule for the Tomb Kings, which gives them the -1 AP. It'll come to me in a minute, but basically that's quite good. He essentially gets a -1 AP weapon. He is strength and toughness 4, so he's like a tomb guard. With I think he has 2 attacks, but the Amulet Serpent gives a 6-up poison to the entire unit, which is really cool. Didn't really do a lot in the games, but really cool nonetheless. Next up, we've got the 3 Tomb Guard chariots. Coming in at 180 points. So the Tomb Guard on a chariot. Like, it is what it is. They're really cool. They have halberds, hand weapons, shields, and I've given the Standard Bearer and a Musician upgrade. As it turns out, you don't really need Musician upgrades in Tomb Kings because of the way that Indomitable works. So if I match a combat and I don't have a Musician, but I have Indomitable, I'm not going to crumble, right? Because it's Indomitable 1 or Indomitable 2. And there's a lot of Indomitable in the list because Tomb Guard have that as a feature. Constructs have that as a feature. So Musician is kind of pointless. even on skeleton infantry cohort, like, I shouldn't have taken a musician. Who cares if one skeleton crumbles from a draw? So next time I'll learn to save that 5 points on a musician. Anyway, Standard Bearer is great, fantastic. Cool unit, really fun, you know, very thematic. They actually kind of like a medium chariot. So Tomb Kings are mainly light chariots. Tomb Guard chariots are a medium chariot, essentially, because they have a 4-up armor save, and they're rocking the... they get +1 to the impact hits. So it's not D6, but they have like scythed wheels, which is essentially like what it used to be as an upgrade. So D3 +1, while normal chariots are D3, so which is cool. Next up, we've got the skeleton infantry cohort. I really wanted to try this out. I went for a 30 big block of skeletons. They have thrusting spears, 20 of them thrusting spears, and 10 of them with war bows. I gave them the Nehekaran phalanx upgrade and light armor. So they're a little bit more durable than you think. You know, they've got a 5-up armor save. The bows have got 6-up armor save. But you'd only do that from shooting, you know, because distributed wounds, you'd have to allocate like shooting, which would be on a 2-to-1 ratio. They also were upgraded with the Banner of the Desert Winds. Essentially, I thought to give them that, and I'm really glad I did, because it gives them Vanguard, which meant I got basically a turn of shooting turn 1, because they only have war bows, I think, at 24-inch range, right? And then it gives them reserve move, which essentially gives them an extra pivot or move at the end of the shoot phase, which is just really good for a huge block of infantry that normally people will be able to get around quite well. So that was my plan with that. The rules around the cohort are a bit confusing. It took a couple of sort of readings of it, but essentially with the Royal Host, they have Steadfast Discipline as a special rule. It allows them to stand and shoot when... it allows them to volley fire in stand and shoot after they've moved, so they can always volley fire, basically. But because it's like a big unit, that 10 archers only get 5 shots. That's sort of how I've mathed it, unless I put the archers in the front rank. I don't know. Anybody in the comments want to correct me on that? I think I've played it right, because I put the archers all on the back rank. Should I spread them throughout the ranks, or should I keep them in one rank? I'm not so sure. Next up, we've got some Ushapti. I've just got 3 cheeky Ushapti with ritual blades, coming in with those great weapons or hand weapon options. The great weapons were very useful, as it turns out. Great against cavalry, strength 6, -2 AP. Next up, we've got Tomb Scorpion to round out the list. I gave him the ambushes. So he is what it is, 75 points with ambushes, which I completely forgot in my first game. Second game, he came in quite useful. Right, so that's my list, and onto the opponent. All right, we're coming into Carl's list. Starting off from the top, he is rocking a Duke, going in for the big boys, 390 points. This badass is running hand weapon, heavy armor. He's the general. He's equipped with the Royal Pegasus. For magic items, he's been given the Dragon Slaying Sword, which gives him monster killing blow, the Enchanted Shield, Sirene's Locket, and Virtue of Knightly Temper. Enchanted Shield is a shield with a 6-up ward save, and Sirene's Locket, a model whose troop type is infantry or cavalry. The bearer is immune to multiple wounds, X special rule. If the bearer is wounded by an attack with special rule, they suffer a single wound. I actually don't think this works as a magic item for this character, because he's on a Royal Pegasus, which is a monstrous cavalry, not a cavalry. So bit of feedback for you, Carl. I don't think you can run that Sirene's Locket with this, because it's a Royal Pegasus. Anything that's mounted on a monster or a monstrous cavalry changes the unit category from infantry or cavalry. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, or anybody in the comments, but I think that's the case. Also took the Virtue of Knightly Temper, which gives it the extra D3 attacks and hatred all enemies on the turn it charges. This guy's absolute beast. You know, coming in there, 4 wounds, 5 attacks. He's rocking it. Core for next up for core, he's got 10 mounted Knights of the Realm. They were just given the Lance's Shields. The first knight was given the Antlers of the Great Hunt, which is a really cool little item. gives them the move through cover special rule, which is really cool when you've got a massive block or a wedge of cheese of cavalry, as these guys were rocking around in. Then 2 units of peasantry bowmen. Peasantry bowmen all had the Villain upgrade, which is essentially just like a sergeant, gives them an extra ballistic skill on 1 shot. They've all got longbows, which, as we know, are nasty, 30-inch range, armor bane 1, volley fire, strength 3 bows. Great stuff. No other upgrades on those. To round out the list, he had 3 Pegasus Knights, coming in at 206 points. They were equipped with all the bells and whistles, so standard bearer, musician, etc. And they were given the banner of Chalons, which is a really cool little upgrade. Essentially stops a unit from doing a stand and shoot charge reaction against this unit, which is great. You know, Pegasus Knights, you don't want any of them dropping to any volley stand and shoot fire, which is really cool. They're of course fly 10, furious charge, and all the nasty pasties that come with Pegasus Knights as a flying skirmish unit. Possibly one of the most powerful units in the game, which is really cool. Quick round out of the list. It, like, looking at it on the table and looking at it on person, from my point of view, it was a really strong list, and I was very nervous to come up against it, just because he had 60% of his points in one flank, which is very hard for you to deal with, and you can see that in my deployment, as I don't really know how to deal with this at this stage in my career as an OldWorld player. So let's just jump straight into the deployment and have a look at the games. Quick deployment for you. I put my Shopty in the bottom left hand corner, big brick in the middle, and the chariots just behind those. Carl put his Pegasus Knights and a unit of archers in the top right corner, his Knights of the Realm in top left corner, and the and the peasant bowmen on that hill. So pretty interesting little deployment. I kind of refused a lot of the right hand flank because he hadn't put anything in the centre, and put pretty much all of my force on the left hand side to force the Pegasus and the archers to move. I vanguarded up the skeletal cohort, and then turn 1 I moved those guys forwards after casting Cursed Blades. So I just moved the big block forwards with the intention of potentially getting some turn 1 shooting off with the Tomb Kings. I then essentially just had a little pop at that little unit of peasantry archers, and I didn't score any hits or anything, which ended my turn 1. So going into Carl's turn 1, he essentially just moved things over from that hard flank. So he'd put his Pegasus Knights, and he's sort of correcting because I'd done a refused flank by keeping everything over to the left hand side. So essentially he moved his Pegasus Knights into the middle, ready to combat what I was going to do next. Kept his peasantry bowmen where they were because, you know, 30-inch range is going to be in range of my skeleton cohort. He didn't move his cavalry because he was just waiting for me to come towards him, essentially doing the Brettonian, waiting for the right turn and getting everything charging at once. He took a couple of little cheeky pot shots off at my skeleton archers, which I think scored no wounds or just 1 wound. So end of turn 1, here is how the battlefield looks. So my turn 2, rolling for a few different bits. I have leadership test for Arise, in which I brought back a skeleton warrior. I have leadership test on the Prince for My Will Be Done, which I gave them movement speed onto the chariots. And then I had a leadership test on the Necrotech, which I failed on this account. It's a leadership 7, so you have to roll it on his leadership, which gives them the +1 and +1 attack and hatred. We then moved up the big block of skeleton infantry, the cohort, ready to go, and just sort of tucked everything up surrounding them. That was the Arise that I'd forgotten. All of these things that have to be done in the command step, so much to learn. The Yashapti then moved up to support the flank of the infantry cohort. So if they took the charge, I then started trying to cast magic. So I managed to cast Spirit Leech onto the big unit, and then attempted to cast Desiccation, which failed. I then tried to fire into the big block of Knights of the Realm, checking to see if Cursed Blades was in effect, which I managed to score a couple of hits there, 3 hits and 2 wounds, which he saved both of them, sadly. I then did the pivot on the chariots to get them so that they can charge into the fight. Next up, we start off with a charge on the turn 2 of Carl's Brettonians, and he rolled 3d6 for the Pegasus Knights. So I just corrected him and said you need to roll 2d6, pick the highest, and then roll 1 additional d6 for Swift Stride, which is how you're meant to do it, not just roll 3d6 and pick the 2 highest, which is how it works out mathematically. I then explained that with a skirmish unit, you have to form up against my unit, and they don't have a lance like that. I also said that the Baron, you probably want to get him into the hero, which is why I positioned that. Then we got a charge into the Ushabti, which I was a bit shocked at, but then I've got, if they could weather the turn, I could get a nice flank charge off with my big skeleton block. We then had some shots from the Bowman, we're scoring a couple of hits. I think he was on 5s, and then 4s on the Villain, 3, and then I failed to save anything. Next lot of 10, we got 5 hits, 4 wounds. Again, no saves, no regens, so he actually stripped quite a chunk of my archers off the back there. Just me trying to remove them from my little movement trays. We're then on to combat. So we went with the Pegasus one first. He declared a challenge. I accepted, so I moved the Prince over to that flank, so he's in with the Baron. And we go from there. Next up, we've got the big combat. It's going to be the Tomb Guard Chariots with the Prince versus the Pegasus Knights and the Duke. So the Duke has the Virtue of the Tempest or whatever, so it's D3 additional attacks and hatred first round of combat, which is nasty. He gets a spicy 4 hits total with the reroll. Scored a wound. His Pegasus then struck 3 attacks, no wounds. I then forgot to do my regen save, which I did, and passed it on a 6. So I got the wound back, but he still gets the combat res. Next up, we have the Pegasus Knights striking into the Chariots. And he scored a whopping 5 hits and wounded on 2s, 6's AP -3. So, oh no, sorry, it was wounded on 3s because he was strength 5 versus toughness 4. So AP -3 on the 6s, AP -2 on the others, so I had a 6-up save and then no save against the other 2, which I didn't pass any. I then failed all my regens. The Steeds attacked in, the Pegasus is attacked in, 2 hits, 2 wounds on 6s, no saves, no regens. So that's the other chariot down. That's 6 wounds lost. I get to strike back in with the Prince next. He's got 4 attacks, all 4 of them hit. And I get 2 wounds. These are AP -1. And they failed the wound, failed the ward save. The Steeds did nothing. And we get into the Tomb Guard Chariot Captain. 4 attacks. He rolled 1 from Cursed Blades. 2 hits, 1 wound, which was a cleaving blow, which means no armor saves allowed. Ward save on a 5+ because I was using halberds, which failed on a 4+ there. So as we calculated the combat, he had 5 wounds, including 1 that I regenerated, 4 that were done to the chariot. I did 2 wounds to him back. He had a banner, I didn't have a banner, so we were looking at 6-2, and then I had Indomitable 2, but we did slightly miscalculate. I think he gave himself a rank bonus, which he wouldn't have got, as it's usually the second rank onwards is when you get a rank bonus. So there would have been 1 less combat resolution from that. Either way, we played it as if he did, and my Tomb Guard Chariot crumbled, leaving the Prince on his Todd, but with 4 wounds. We're kicking off with the challenge, Ushabti versus the First Knight. The Venerable Ushabti accepts. He does 2 misses, unfortunately. The Venerable Ushabti then tries to strike back, as they're both weapon skill 3. So they're hitting on 4s each. I get 1 hit back in return, hit wound on 2s with the Great Weapon, and nothing. He then gets to strike with his horses. Horses hit and Horsey's wound on 5s, and I fail my armor save and fail my regen. So there you go, there's a 1 wound from a horse in the challenge. Lovely jubbly, good start. He then gets a whopping load of attacks in from those lovely lance formation, which ends, I think they're hitting on 4s still, wounds on 3s with lances. I then save 1 and fail 1. Forgot to do my regen save there. Horsey's then come in 3 hits, 1 wound, fails to armor save and fails my regen again. So there you go, I come back in swinging with 3 hits and 2 to wound him, which I get all of them. He needs 5s and then 5s from the regen, from the ward save, which he passes. All of the Ushabti get nothing in return, and that is a bad time. Combat res was rough. He had 7 to 0 from me. I have Indomitable 1, so I crumbled by 7 but reduced by 1, so I crumbled by 6, leaving the champion Ushabti on 1 wound going into round 3. So turn 3 for the Tomb Kings. I start off with a Cursed Blades attempt from the command phase, which I passed. He didn't dispel it. I then did the Arise on the Ushabti, which is your level plus 1 for monstrous infantry and monstrous cavalry, so I got 2 plus 1, 3 wounds back, healing the venerable back to full and bringing 1 back on 1 wound. Very helpful. We had a little course correction here. I should have fallen back by 2, pushed back by 2, and he chose to follow up, which is what that little shenanigan was there. The Tomb Priest leaves the unit, and then I charge and get the 6, which allows me to get the full charge in. We formed up along the fighting rank. And I moved the Mortuary Priest around a little bit to try and get some range, hopefully, for some spells. Then cast Curse of Desiccation on the Brettonia Knights, which we forgot in the ensuing combat, unfortunately. I then remembered that I should have done 2 things in my command step. From Beneath the Sands, which I failed on a 9, I need leadership 7. And then I also failed the Necrotech roll, which is very important, leadership 7 roll. If I get it, it's hatred and plus 1 attack for all the skeletons, which would have been lovely. But unfortunately, I rolled an 11 on that, so there we go. Alright, the lovely skeleton cohort attacks here. So we've got 11 attacks total. 10 attacks total because the Necrotech's in the fighting rank. I was on 4s, but I have 6s are poisons. I get 1 poison and 3 hits. I get 2 additional wounds from that, wounding him on 4s. And he passes 1 and fails 2, gets none of the ward saves, so 2 guys go down. Necrotech gets a strike, gets 1 hit, gets 1 wound, and he passes the armor save on a 4+. He gets a 6. Lucky him. So next up, they are striking back. I did have to explain the fighting rank system of this new edition. I killed 2 out of the fighting rank on that flank, so he could only strike back with 1 into the skeletons. He hits, he wounds, I fail my saves and my regen, so that's 1 skeleton down. So only 1 guy could strike back. Then we do the challenge. He gets 2 hits, 2 wounds. I get 1 save, fail my regen, so that's a wound in the Ushabti, and the Ushabti then strikes back into that challenge. He gets 1 hit and 1 wound, but once again, the lucky sod gets a 5-up save, saves it. So the Ushabti have done nothing so far. The other Ushabti member cannot strike back into that combat because of the way that the challenge is, and he has no base-to-base with anybody else. So that was it from their strikes. Then we work out combat res. So combat res in the fight, we ended up with 4 to 7. So I had 2 close orders, a flank, 2 kills, 1 rank, and a banner. He had 4 from 2 wounds, a banner, and close order. So working it out, he then made his leadership test, and at the time, I think we made a mistake here. So I thought he was under the impression of Spirit Leech. He had Spirit Leech on him. So I must have cast that previously in the turn, but then I must have cast Curse of Desiccation as well. So one of those wouldn't have worked. We didn't play with Curse of Desiccation, so in this case it didn't make any difference. So let's say that Spirit Leech was on him and Curse of Desiccation wasn't on him, because we didn't play Desiccation with the buffs or anything like that because we forgot. So that makes more sense. So that means he was -2 to his leadership. He can't use his general's leadership. So we rolled a 7. So he would be under his unmodified leadership. So he fails the break test. Does that make sense? So he'd be leadership 8, -2, rolled a 7. So he fails the break test. And he has to roll for the run. I then pursue. So I pursue 7. He rolls 8. And I'm literally just behind him. We couldn't quite figure out like where you run it from. Otherwise, we would have been sort of overlapping because of the weird flank. So I basically just pushed my guys up 7 inches, pushed his guys so they were bumped 1 inch in front of me. We were essentially base to base because he rolled 7, I rolled an 8. The Ashapti then decided to pass their reform. Next is the Tomb King fight, but Carl kindly lets me do my will be done first, which I pass and add D3 initiative, which is a lovely little 2 bonus. And as that turns out, that means we're both initiative 5. So he'll do his attacks first, just because we're rolling them first, and he gets 4 lovely hits. And he gets, I'm T5 here, so he only gets 1 wound there. He's T5, I'm strength 5. Sorry, the other way around. He's strength 5, I'm T5. He then does this Pegasus, gets 2 hits. Pegasus is also strength 5, but gets no wounds. So got quite lucky there. I get to strike back, and 4 attacks. I get 4 hits, hitting on 4s, and I only get 1 wound because I'm wounding on 5s against him. He's T5, I'm strength 4. He fails both his armor and his ward save, so it's 1 wound apiece. But because the Pegasus are still technically in the combat, he adds +1. Plus my ponies did have a little pop there. Got 2 hits, but no wounds, sadly. Does mean I don't crumble because I have Indomitable 2, and I get bumped back by 2 inches. So we're into turn 4 for the Brettonians. We go a rally, and they fail their rally and end up running off the board for the Knights of the Realm, which is a shame. Freeing up that flank for me, thankfully, but it does mean I have to reform, etc. The Pegasus Knights and the Baron didn't follow up on their previous turn, so they're going to get the charge now, and that was their plan too, because it was sort of a static combat back in 2. He then got the charge on this time, so he could get the lance and lance bonus. So I will talk a little bit about my mistake here while we're sorting this out. So I made a big whopping mistake. I left my mortuary priest right in the open, and he has 20 peasant bowmen. Wow. So what would I have done differently here? I probably shouldn't have followed or chased with the skeleton warriors. I should have kept them where they are and reformed, and instead chased with the Ashapti. I, however, made that very horrible mistake, and as you're going to see very soon, that mortuary priest gets turned into pincushions. He's been hitting on 6s and wounding on 4s. There's 4 wounds, and the mortuary priest has no armor, only a 5-up regen save, which is pretty much going to be the death of that poor priest, as he only has 5-up regens. He did. Well, she did in this case. So that's a big news. At the time, I also didn't think... I hadn't read the Royal Host properly. So in the Royal Host, my Tomb Prince actually is my Hierophant. But in the game, I thought that the Priest was my Hierophant. So at that point, I started rolling Crumbling after the shooting phase here. So next we go into the combat once again. And he gets to roll D3 additional attacks, gets 2 additional attacks with the Duke, and starts swinging into that poor prince by himself out in the open with a full charge. He has all the bells and whistles. and he's going to get a significant amount of hits because of the re-roll into hits with hatred. He's going to be wounding me on 2s because I told him he could use his lance instead of his magic weapon. As it turns out, you can only use the magic weapon. You can't choose. If you have a magic weapon, you have to take it. So I would have been taking 2 less wounds here at a less AP as well, which is a shame. It might have meant that the Tomb Prince might have survived. But in this case, I don't think it would have survived the lances from the Pegasuses as well. So probably wouldn't have made a difference either way, but you never know. So at this point, he destroys and then reforms. And either way, so this is where the Hierophant issue didn't matter, because the Hierophant was my prince in this case, and they both died in the same turn. So I'd still have to roll to crumble anyway, as if it wouldn't have made a difference. So this is what I'm doing now. I crumble by I rolled an 11 there on the skeletons, so with a leadership of like 7, I think, from the Necrotex in the unit. So that's quite a significant number there. 4 dead. The Ushapti again rolled a 10. So start crumbling away on them, lose 2 wounds. At this point, I've also continued to forget my Tomb Scorpion. So I think at the end of this turn, I get allowed to bring it on from the back edge, because it should have come on the previous turn, or at least the turn, probably turn 3 or 4 if I'd remembered. I did remember 1 from Beneath the Sands, which was turn 2, and I should have remembered it turn 3 or 4, but it is what it is. I, in my turn, reform the skeleton unit completely, put them back into a normal proper brick to get some combat resolution, and just turn them around, give them a little spinneroo. The Ushapti just shunt their way forwards a little bit. I feel like they're going to die either from the shooting or from the charge. They could probably stand up if they get a charge off, but because of the lances going in at strength 6, they're going to dissolve those Ushapti if they get the charge on them. But here we are, we're rolling for the Tomb Scorpion to come on. Tomb Scorpion comes on from the back, and again, I've misplayed this, and I've gone over this with Ben. Your ambush is meant to be in the command phase, and then they come on after charges are made in the compulsory move step. So 2 mistakes there. I'd actually charged with the Scorpion, but if you think about it, it should have come on 2 turns earlier if I'd remembered, and it would have probably been in the same position and then charged, which may have actually stopped the Mortuary Priest from getting mullered. So we're just doing some cheeky combat there with the Scorpion, just causing a couple of wounds. But at this point, we're looking pretty dire. So this is strikes back from the other attacks from the Scorpion, clears out a rank of the Bowmen. Bowmen just crumble. Scorpion goes 5 inches and completely just destroys them. And he's sitting pretty on that hill. So the Scorpion's actually doing me okay in that position now. I've got some significant threats. I then crumble again. I crumble and lose a load of wounds on the Ushapti. I don't lose any wounds on the skeletons. I don't know why I've put some back there. Must have been from something else. And then the Scorpion doesn't look like he loses any wounds either. This is the reserve move at the end of the shooting phase for me. I should have done that, and he allowed me to do that because of the Banner of the Desert Wind. So going into his turn 5, he then moves all of the flying unit over towards the flank of the skeleton cohort and challenging the Scorpion, which was a bit of a unusual maneuver for me, a really good play from him, because it's just put me out of the charge range of everybody. So I'm going to have to force another turn of crumbling and bow shots as he tries to plink that final wound off the Ushapti here. Gets no wounds at all, got 1 hit, no wounds. The Ushapti is still there, probably going to crumble any second. And then that was the end of his turn 5. Going into my turn 5, I basically just start chugging everything towards him. 5 inches for the Ushapti. I reform with the skeleton cohort, and I decide with the Scorpion, because it's actually close order, it can't be a skirmisher, otherwise it could have turned and charged. So that's one of the ways they balanced it. So instead, I moved down and then pivoted to face, so that if the skeletons do get charged, then I will also get charged and strike with the Scorpion as well. So this is more crumbles, the Shapti gone, Skeleton Cohort are fine, and the Scorpion is fine. So not a lot left on the board for me at all, and things are not going my way. He still has 600 points of his list in that one unit. So going into his final turn, charges, just checking the ranges, and he gets to roll 2d6, pick the highest, gets a 3, rolls the 4th on the Swift Stride, plus the, I think, fly 9 or 10 on the Pegasus, so that's definitely an easy charge for him. Just means those bowmen are just hanging out in the wind there, keeping their points for now, I guess. And then everything gets moved in there, strategically keeping the Baron away from the Scorpion, which is a very sensible move. But he probably could have killed the Scorpion anyway on the charge, because he does have Monster Slayer on that Dragon Slayer sword. But the Scorpion does have Killing Blow and Monstrous Killing Blow, so it can do some damage in return. So he actually declared a challenge and I accepted with a Necrotech. So he's doing all of his attacks into that poor Necrotech and getting a whole spread of hits and basically 5 wounds. I don't think I had any armor save, so it's down to the regen on this bad boy, which he will whoppingly fail all of these. So giving him 5 combat res for losing the Necrotech. So I did retain a lot of my skeletons, but at the loss of a significant amount of combat resolution. So next up, he's going to be doing the Pegasus Knights, and the Pegasus Knights are hitting on 4s and wounding on 2s. So that's 4 more wounds into the Skelly Bros, or 5 more wounds into the Skelly Bros in this case, and I get 1 save, 1 regen save. So that's another chunk of skeletons destroyed. This is the Pegasus attacks into the unit. He gets 1 more kill. This is me striking back with the skeletons because I have Spearman, and which allows me to strike with the 2nd rank. And I get 1 wound, which he does pass. So I did actually have the Necrotech giving +1 attack and hatred to the Skeleton Warriors, which is why I got to reroll those attacks. And allowed me to get that 1 wound, which he did pass, of course. Next we have the Scorpion, which managed to hit and cause a poisoned attack with the Sting, but he passed his armor save. I then did Crushing Claws, which I got 2 hits and 2 wounds, and kills 1 of the Pegasus Knights and leaves 1 of them on 1 wound. So coming into combat resolution for the final combat of the game, the Brettonians ended up with 11 kills, 5 from the challenge with the Necrotech, and the remaining 6 from skeleton wounds from the Pegasus, plus a banner. Then I got 2 wounds, 2 ranks remaining from the skeletons, plus close order from one of them from the skeletons, because close order doesn't count for the Scorpion because it does not have a unit strength of 5 or more. They clarified this. They're giving the Scorpion close order and unit strength of 3 so that it can't just pivot and stuff like this, and it can't get the benefit of close order, which is a shame. So it looks like I crumble a significant amount. The Scorpion does have Indomitable 1, which reduces it by 1, but I'm still crumbling by 5. It has 3 wounds. The Scorpion's out of there, and I crumble by 5 on the skeletons as well, leaving me with just 10 skeletons remaining at the end of the game. So my first game was a loss at 12-8. So just to clarify a few things from that final little combat, was a bit of a crazy mess at the end there. It was actually the champion from the cohort that took the challenge from the Baron. So the Necrotech is still in the unit, so I still get to keep his 85 points, plus the cohort's points, so it ended up as a 12-8 loss for me, victory for Carl. I had a great game against Carl. We had a lot of laughs. It was really fun. Going into this game, it was going to be a tough matchup. Brettonians are great. I love Brettonians. I have a Brettonian army myself. I did my best to try and offset his strange deployment from the beginning. It was a difficult deployment to go into, with him going in both corners and me having to sort of sit somewhere in the middle. But I pushed myself over a little bit to the left Things to do differently. I think going into Tomb Kings to start playing Warhammer is a bit difficult because Tomb Kings have a lot of things to remember. They have a lot of upkeep stuff. So they have magic phase, they have a shooting phase, they have a lot to do in the command step. You know, you've got some buffs like cursed weapons and stuff like that, depending on what spells you go for. But My Will Be Done, Arise, and From Beneath the Sands, Ambush, all of these things have to be remembered. And in this game, Ambush was a big one. If I'd remembered Ambush in turn 3 and 4, that Scorpion would have come on, I would have killed those bowmen, and would have probably stopped the Mortuary Priest getting destroyed, and then been there to help out earlier in the fight, maybe. It's all subjective. You don't know, but as it stood, you know, it is what it is. I completely forgot my rules. And Carl kindly, in a few occasions, let me do my Necrotech and let me do My Will Be Done after the command phase, which is very gentlemanly of you, Carl. Thank you so much, brother. So a big bunch of us, 8 of us, went down to War Office in Rochdale, and we all had a weekend, a Sunday of gaming. We got 2 games in, got our first 2 of the league at both at 1,000 points. Kept same lists, you know, just had some fun with it. And we've had a good chat after the fact. There were quite a lot of limitations on the lists because of it's a slow grow league. It's meant to have a narrative built in and stuff like this. So after talking about it and things like this, we've agreed and voted on a 20% cap per hero. So you can only spend up to 20% of your points for your list on your hero. And that will prevent some big whoppers swinging their big dicks around, like the Barons on the Royal Pegasus or on the Hippogriffs, which both the Bretonian players took. And the reason that's a big balance change for them is no other faction is able to do that really other than Orcs, because we banned Behemoths, we banned Dragons, and we banned Lord characters, apparently. So that's a big nerf to every single faction, but the Bretonians were able to get around that because they have some non-Behemoth mounts, essentially. So having a 400-point character in a 1,000-point game is quite strong. They have to admit it is a very, very strong combination. It allows you to really dick over everybody else. Nobody else has a hero that can even come close to that. So I'm glad that we have implemented the 20% points. But the game still stands. I'm not bothered about that. It's just so there's a couple of people who haven't played their games yet. And then going forwards into 1,500 points, you know, that 20% cap is going to still be there. This does mean that later on in the league, when we get to 2,000, 2,500 points, we are going to be able to bring the big toys. And I do have a dragon waiting to get painted. So I like that we've balanced it like that, so that nobody's going to be throwing the most powerful things into the mix from the start. However, you know, that's what I encountered in my game, and one of the other Bretonian players did throw a Hippogriff into an Orc face, which is good. Ben, one of the other chaps who's been helping organise everything, and thank you again, Ben, for helping organise this day. His Orc list was very, very cool as well, very spicy. And he's able to bring, you know, like a 2-up save on a Black Orc boss and stuff like that. So he's still able to bring some spicy stuff. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's allowing me to slow grow my army and get some paint on my Tomb Kings in and around everything else. And it's bringing some of my hobby passion back. For those of you who don't know, I have a newborn baby now. And I've been struggling to get content and streaming and all of the jazz on top of everything. So I'm really pleased that I got a chance to go to this, get 2 of my games in. I got to record them while I was there. I know it's not the best angle, so thank you everybody for sticking about with me for that angle. And I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for game 2.